At the GO station in Oakville, I found my son sitting on a metal bench with my 5-year-old grandson and 2 hockey bags stuffed with clothes. Everything they owned. I pulled up in my old Ford F-150, the same truck I'd driven for 20 years, and walked over slowly. Daniel didn't look up until my shadow crossed his face. I asked him, "Why aren't you at the office?" He stared at the concrete. "I was let go this morning." Richard said, "A tradesman's son doesn't belong in the Harrington family business." He said our kind of people should stick to hammering nails. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger. Something deeper. Something patient. "Get in the truck," I said quietly. "Dad, I don't have anywhere to go." Stephanie changed the locks. "Put our things outside while I was being fired," said her father made the right call. My grandson Liam tugged my sleeve. His eyes were red from crying. "Grandpa, can we go to your house? Mommy says we're not allowed there anymore." I knelt down to his level and put my hand on his shoulder. "We're going home, buddy, and I promise you, everything is going to be okay." I picked up both hockey bags and nodded toward my truck. Daniel followed, shoulders hunched like a man who'd lost everything. Welcome to our channel. If this story speaks to you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more powerful stories. We'd love to know where you're watching from, so share your location in the comments below. This story combines fictional elements with real-world themes for dramatic effect and learning. Names and locations may be imagined, but the lessons about loyalty, dignity, and family are drawn from genuine human experience. We drove north on the QEW toward Burlington in silence. Liam fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the morning's chaos. Daniel sat in the passenger seat, staring out at Lake Ontario, his jaw tight. 3 years, I finally said. 3 years I watched you try to earn their respect. Daniel didn't respond. "I built Mackenzie Construction over 40 years, I continued. Started with a hammer and a pickup truck. Grew it to one of the largest commercial contractors in the GTA. $87 million in annual contracts when I sold the operating company." Daniel knew this. Everyone knew Harold Mackenzie. But there were things he didn't know. 5 years ago, I bought Harrington Development through a numbered company, a holding corporation registered in Alberta where the beneficial owner stays anonymous. I paused, letting that sink in. I put Richard in charge as CEO, gave him a corner office and a fancy title, let him believe he'd earned it. Daniel's head turned slowly. "What? You came to me 5 years ago, said you wanted to prove yourself. Said you wanted Stephanie's family to respect you for who you are, not whose son you are. You asked me not to interfere. So I didn't. You've owned the company this whole time? Every paycheck Richard signed, every bonus he gave himself, every time he called me a blue-collar dinosaur at those Sunday dinners, he was spending money I provided. He's been working for me the entire time. He just didn't know it." Daniel's face went through several emotions. Confusion, disbelief, then something that looked almost like hope. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because we had a deal. You needed to know you could stand on your own. You needed to prove to yourself that you belonged there." I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "But that deal ended when I saw you sitting on that bench. A man who insults my son's bloodline doesn't get to keep a company I own." The gates of my property appeared. 20 acres outside Burlington, a stone house I'd built with my own hands 40 years ago when Margaret was still alive. "Home? What are you going to do?" Daniel asked quietly. I smiled, not warmly, the smile I used before closing deals that left the other side with nothing. Richard Harrington wanted to play games with bloodlines and breeding. Now he's going to learn something important. I pulled into the driveway and killed the engine. In my world, bloodlines mean nothing. Character means everything. And he just picked a fight with the wrong family. What Daniel didn't know was that I'd been collecting information for months. Receipts, emails, financial records. I'd watched Richard's behavior change over the past year, watched him grow more confident, more reckless. Something had shifted, and I'd been waiting to find out what. Tonight, I would find out, and then the reckoning would begin. While Daniel put Liam to bed upstairs, I sat in my study and let my mind travel back through 3 years of Sunday dinners at the Harrington estate in Oakville. That first dinner, Richard had picked up Daniel's wine glass and moved it 2 inches to the left. "Like this," he'd said in that tone wealthy men use when pretending to teach. "You hold a proper Bordeaux by the stem, never the bowl. Small details reveal breeding, Daniel. or the lack of it. Daniel's face had flushed red. Yes, sir. Stephanie hadn't looked up from her phone. She never defended him, not once in 3 years. I'd cut my steak precisely and said nothing. I had made a promise. Every Sunday brought another lesson in humiliation. His choice of suit was wrong. His handshake was too firm, then too soft. His Brock University degree was mentioned with barely concealed contempt compared to Richard's McGill MBA. His father, me, was referred to as the contractor, like it was a disease. Some people understand the nuances of society, Richard had said just 2 months ago, swirling his scotch. And some people, well, they're more comfortable with their hands than their minds. Daniel had said nothing. Stephanie had laughed. I had memorized everything, every slight, every insult, every smug correction, building a case. Then, 6 months ago, something changed. The quarterly reports from Harrington Development started arriving late. In real estate development, timing is everything. When I called the accounting department through an intermediary, they gave me confused excuses about system migrations. I didn't believe them. 4 months ago, Stephanie stopped returning my calls. Before, she'd maintained appearances, hoping for expensive birthday gifts for Liam. Suddenly, straight to voicemail. We're at the cottage. We're traveling. We're resting. A wall had appeared overnight. But the moment I knew something was seriously wrong came 3 weeks ago. Daniel visited me here at the house. He looked terrible. Gaunt, dark circles under his eyes, his clothes hanging loose. He'd lost at least 15 pounds. Just busy, Dad. Year-end closing. Year-end closing doesn't make a man look broken. Then I noticed his wrist. The Omega Seamaster I'd given him when Liam was born, the one that had belonged to my father, was gone. Where's your watch? Daniel pulled his sleeve down quickly. At the jeweler. Band needed adjustment. The lie hung between us. I'd worn that watch for 30 years before giving it to him. The band had never needed adjustment. A man doesn't pawn his father's watch unless he's desperate. After Daniel left that day, I called Frank DeLuca. Frank had been my head of security at Mackenzie Construction for 2 decades. Now he ran a private investigation firm. Complete audit of Harrington Development, I told him. Every transaction for 6 months. And Frank, find out what's happening inside that family, quietly. Understood, Mr. Mackenzie. 72 hours later, Frank walked into my study with a red folder. Red meant urgent. The signs had been there all along. Delayed reports, avoided calls, the missing watch, Richard's increasing confidence. He had no idea I'd been watching, waiting, collecting. Now I was about to find out exactly what he'd been hiding. That evening, Frank laid the red folder on my desk and opened it without ceremony. You need to see this, Mr. Mackenzie. Page 1 was a police report filed that morning at 9:47 a.m., just hours after Daniel was terminated. Complainant, Richard Harrington. Allegation, Daniel Mackenzie removed valuable items from the Harrington residence upon departure. Antique silverware, a collection of rare coins, jewelry estimated at $1.2 million. He filed this while Daniel was sitting at that GO station, I said quietly. Yes, sir. He wanted him arrested before he could defend himself. Page 2 made my blood run cold. Credit applications. 11 separate loans from different financial institutions over 5 months. Total borrowed. $14 million Canadian. All in Daniel's name. Except the signatures weren't his. Handwriting analysis confirmed, Frank said, sliding another document across. High-quality digital forgeries. They used Daniel's actual signature from employment documents, then transferred it onto loan applications. The collateral agreements listed Harrington Development assets as primary security, Daniel's personal assets as secondary. When those loans defaulted, the banks would seize everything. The company would collapse. Daniel would be personally liable for $14 million he never borrowed. They were building a trap, I said. That's our assessment. Bankrupt the company, blame Daniel, let criminal charges follow. He goes to prison while they walk away clean. I turned to the next page. Frank pulled out his tablet and pressed play. Video footage from inside Daniel and Stephanie's bedroom. A hidden camera. Stephanie's voice was sweet with poison underneath. You're so stressed lately, Daniel. Maybe you should talk to someone. You're becoming aggressive. You're scaring Liam. I'm not aggressive. I'm just exhausted from working 80-hour weeks. See? You're raising your voice. You're unstable. The video cut. Another clip showed Stephanie knocking a vase off a shelf herself. Then, immediately, "Why did you do that? Liam, go to your room. Daddy's having one of his episodes." "She was building a custody case," Frank said. "These videos would be shown to a family court judge. Proof that Daniel was dangerous, mentally unstable. She'd get full custody. He'd get supervised visitation, at best." I closed my eyes briefly, controlling the fury building in my chest. "One more thing," Frank said quietly. "The worst part." He laid down a document I recognized immediately. A pledge agreement. My commercial properties at 401 and Dundas in Mississauga. The buildings that housed 3 major retail centers and generated $12 million in annual rental income, pledged as collateral for a $6 million loan from a private lender in the Cayman Islands. How did they access the property records? Forged power of attorney through a corrupt lawyer in Brampton. The money transfers Friday at noon. Through the window, I could see the glow from the upstairs bedroom where Daniel was reading Liam a bedtime story. My grandson's sleepy voice drifted down, asking about hockey practice. They had tried to destroy both of them. My son, my grandson, my family. "Block that transfer," I said. "Contact the Law Society, the RCMP Financial Crimes Unit, whoever you need. That money doesn't move." "Understood." "And Frank," I turned from the window, "get me everything on Richard Harrington. Every loan, every account, every offshore entity, every secret. I want to know what he owes and to whom." Frank nodded. He recognized this tone. "They tried to build a trap for my son," I said quietly. "Now I'm going to show them what a real trap looks like." After Frank left, I sat alone listening to Liam's laughter from upstairs, then the house growing quiet as they both fell asleep. Richard and Stephanie Harrington had made a critical miscalculation. They thought I was just a retired contractor, an old man with calloused hands who'd gotten lucky in construction, someone who'd sit quietly while they destroyed everything I'd built. They were about to learn the difference between having money and having power. Thursday morning, I drove to my lawyer's office at Bay and King. Thomas Chen had handled my affairs for 25 years. "I need you to acquire every debt Richard Harrington currently holds," I said, sliding a folder across his desk. "Mortgages, lines of credit, car loans, credit cards, everything." Thomas flipped through the documents Frank had compiled. His eyebrows rose steadily higher. "This is extensive. The family residence alone carries a $4.2 million mortgage. His commercial lines of credit through TD and RBC total another $8 million. Personal credit cards, vehicle financing." He looked up. "You're talking about purchasing approximately $18 million in debt." "I'm aware, Harold. Acquiring distressed debt in this volume is highly unusual. Banks don't typically sell performing loans. Richard hasn't made a full mortgage payment in 4 months. The commercial lines are 90 days overdue. He's been shuffling money between accounts to hide it, but the banks are nervous." I leaned forward. "Make them an offer they can't refuse. 90 cents on the dollar. Cash. Immediate closing." Thomas studied me carefully. "What exactly are you planning?" "Justice." By Friday afternoon, $18 million in Harrington family debt had been transferred to a numbered company I controlled. This gave me something far more valuable than the money itself: control. Friday evening, I made another call. "Thomas, freeze all accounts connected to Richard Harrington, effective immediately." "Sir, that will cause significant disruption to his daily operations. I'm the primary creditor now. Do it." 15 minutes later, confirmation arrived on my phone. "Account status. Frozen. Reason. Security review. Contact creditor for information." I imagined Richard seeing that notification on his phone, feeling the ground shift beneath his feet. At 6 p.m., Frank called. "The Cayman transfer has been flagged by FinTrack. They've opened a money laundering investigation. The funds are frozen, pending review." "How long?" "Months, possibly years. The properties are secure. The buildings Richard had tried to steal would remain exactly where they belonged." "One more thing," Frank continued. "Harrington is scheduled to receive an award tomorrow night. The Canadian Real Estate Development Association's Entrepreneur of the Year. Black tie gala at the Fairmont Royal York." I smiled. 300 guests. Media coverage. Everyone who matters in Toronto real estate will be watching. "Perfect. What do you want me to do?" "Get me a table and prepare a presentation for the big screen. Richard Harrington, was preparing for his coronation. He didn't realize the throne was already empty. The ballroom at the Fairmont Royal York glittered like something from another century. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light across designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. The Canadian real estate elite had gathered to celebrate one of their own. From my position near the back of the room, I watched Richard work the crowd. He wore a charcoal Armani suit, shaking hands and accepting congratulations like a man who believed he'd earned every success. He hadn't earned anything. He'd stolen it. From the numbered company that actually owned Harrington Development. From my son. From me. Stephanie stood beside him in an emerald dress, her smile frozen in place. But something was wrong. I could see it in the way guests whispered after greeting Richard, the way phones appeared discreetly, eyebrows rising, excuses made to step away. News travels fast in circles this small. At 7:55, I watched Richard pull out his phone. His face went pale. He tapped the screen. Once, twice, 3 times, each attempt more frantic. Account frozen. Contact creditor. He tried another app, then another. Error, error, error. Stephanie leaned close, still smiling for the crowd. "What's wrong?" Richard showed her his phone. Her smile vanished. "My cards," she whispered. "They're all declined. The caterer just called. The payment bounced." Richard scanned the room, searching for friendly faces. Eyes that had welcomed him for decades suddenly found urgent reasons to look elsewhere. His network was dissolving in real time. He straightened his tie, forced his shoulders back, adopted the expression of a man in complete control. But his hands were shaking. At exactly 8 p.m., the lights dimmed. The master of ceremonies, a prominent Toronto developer I'd known for 30 years, took the stage with a practiced smile. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to present this year's Canadian Real Estate Development Association Entrepreneur of the Year Award to Mr. Richard Harrington." Applause rippled through the ballroom, polite, scattered, notably brief. Richard walked toward the stage. Each step seemed heavier than the last. The spotlight followed him, harsh and unforgiving. Sweat glistened on his forehead. He grasped the microphone, opened his mouth to speak, and the giant screen behind him blazed to life. Instead of the Harrington Development logo, audio crackled through the speakers. Stephanie's voice crystal clear. "The old man has no idea. He thinks Daniel is just incompetent. By the time he figures out what happened, we'll own everything, and his precious son will be in prison." Richard spun toward the screen, his face contorting. His own voice followed, recorded 3 weeks earlier. The contractor's kid was never going to amount to anything anyway. Some bloodlines just aren't meant for success. He should have stayed in his father's world, swinging a hammer. The ballroom erupted in gasps. 300 people leaned forward, phones rising to capture what came next. The screen shifted. Documents appeared. Bank records, forged signatures, offshore transfer orders, each stamped with bold red text. Forgery, fraud, identity theft. Richard stood frozen at the podium, mouth opening and closing without sound, his carefully constructed world collapsing in real time. I walked forward from the back of the room. The crowd parted as I approached the stage. My footsteps echoed in the silence. "Good evening." Richard's eyes went wide with recognition. Terror followed immediately. "You," he whispered. I climbed the stairs and stood beside him. Up close, I could see the panic in his eyes, the sweat soaking through his collar. "This is lies," he said desperately, turning to the audience. "This is a setup. This man, this contractor, he's jealous of everything we've built." No one spoke. No one moved to his defense. I addressed the room calmly. "My name is Harold Mackenzie. Some of you know me as a retired contractor. What you don't know is that I'm the beneficial owner of Harrington Development. I have been since before Richard Harrington took the position of CEO. Every paycheck he's signed for the past 5 years has come from a company I own." Murmurs swept through the crowd. I placed 3 folders on the podium. Folder 1. Asset documentation. Harrington Development. This building we're standing in tonight. The commercial properties across the GTA that bear the Harrington name, all owned by my holding company. Richard has been an employee, nothing more. Richard's knees buckled slightly. Folder 2. Evidence of systematic fraud. $14 million in loans forged in my son's name. A scheme to bankrupt the company, blame an innocent man, and walk away clean. I opened the 3rd folder. Folder 3. Copies of everything now in the possession of the RCMP Financial Crimes Unit and the Ontario Securities Commission. Forgery, fraud, money laundering, identity theft. The investigation begins Monday morning. Richard collapsed, not dramatically, just a slow, defeated sink to his knees on the stage floor. Stephanie screamed from the front row. She launched herself toward the stage, hands extended like claws. Frank DeLuca intercepted her halfway up the stairs. "Let me go. Daddy, do something." Her father didn't move, didn't even look up from where he knelt on the floor. Frank produced an envelope. Eviction notice. Police are at your residence now. You have 4 hours to collect personal belongings. All jewelry and valuables have been catalogued as potential evidence. Her screams dissolved into sobbing. I turned to address the ballroom one final time. Richard Harrington believed that bloodlines determined worth, that a man who built things with his hands could never understand business, that my son didn't deserve to be part of his family because of where he came from. I paused, letting my gaze sweep across 300 faces. He was wrong. Character determines worth, integrity, loyalty, the willingness to work hard and treat people with respect. My son has all of those qualities. Richard Harrington has none of them. I stepped back from the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your evening. I believe the actual award presentation has been postponed. My son waited at the entrance to the ballroom. His eyes were red, but not from defeat this time. "Dad," he said quietly. "I had no idea." "I know." I put my hand on his shoulder. "Let's go home. Liam is waiting." We walked out together while behind us. Security guards helped the broken man to his feet and led him toward the police officers waiting in the lobby. Outside, the cool Toronto evening air hit my face. It was the first week of October, and the trees along Front Street were just beginning to turn. RCMP officers in plain clothes were waiting, federal warrants in hand. They arrested Richard immediately. 5 charges. His daughter faced different consequences: civil conspiracy, extortion, accessory to fraud. No handcuffs for her that night, but consequences nonetheless. I didn't feel triumph. I felt exhausted relief. The predators were caged. Now came the healing. If you've stayed with me through this journey, through the humiliation, the strategy, and tonight's reckoning, leave a comment below. Tell me, would you have done the same to protect your family? I need to know I'm not alone in this. And a word of caution. What comes next? The aftermath. The consequences they faced. Some details have been dramatized for this telling. Not everything unfolded exactly as I've described. If you prefer to remember tonight's justice as the ending, you're free to stop here. But if you want to know what happened to Richard, to Stephanie, and how my son rebuilt his life, stay with me just a little longer. 2 weeks can feel like 2 years when your world collapses. Richard was processed that night. RCMP officers took him directly from the Royal York to the detention center. 5 charges: forgery, fraud, identity theft, money laundering, criminal conspiracy. Each count carried years. Now he sat in a cell, awaiting trial, staring at concrete walls. His lawyers abandoned him the moment his accounts froze. No money meant no defense. The man who'd once commanded boardrooms and country clubs now commanded nothing but a metal cot and a narrow window. The Armani suit was gone, replaced by orange. He'd lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. He spent hours staring at gray walls, replaying that moment in the ballroom. The screen, the gasps, the collapse of everything he'd built on lies and contempt. The name Harrington, once spoken with respect in Toronto real estate circles, was now whispered like a warning. Stephanie wasn't arrested that night. Her crimes were primarily civil: conspiracy, extortion attempts, accessory to fraud. Serious, but not the federal charges her father faced. The Crown offered a deal: cooperate against her father, forfeit all assets, accept 5 years probation. She took it. She had no choice. Now she lived in a basement apartment in Scarborough, the first place she'd ever rented herself. At 34, she was learning to do laundry for the first time, to cook her own meals, to count change at the grocery store while people waited impatiently behind her. Her last Louis Vuitton bag was listed on Facebook Marketplace. Authentic, excellent condition, must sell quickly. Rent was due in 5 days. She'd tried calling her father twice from a friend's phone. Both calls went to voicemail. He couldn't help her from a cell. He couldn't even help himself. Karma arrived in its purest form. My son returned to Harrington Development as CEO, the position that should have been his from the beginning, the company I'd always intended him to lead. We changed the name, Mackenzie Properties now, a fresh start, $92 million in active projects, 63 employees across 3 provinces. His first week back, Daniel fired the CFO who'd helped forge the loan documents. No hesitation, no second chances. Pack your desk. Security will escort you out. The uncertain man who'd apologized for existing was gone. In his place stood someone forged in fire, tempered by betrayal, hardened into steel. He balanced CEO responsibilities with being a full-time father to Liam. Morning school drop-offs, evening bedtime stories, weekend hockey at the Appleby Arena. I watched him chair a board meeting through the glass wall of the conference room, firm but fair, demanding excellence without cruelty. Employees who'd once dismissed him now straightened when he entered the room. "Is there a problem?" he asked one directly. A project manager who'd made a snide comment about the contractor's kid 2 years earlier. "No, sir," the man stammered. Frank appeared beside me in the hallway. "He's ready, Harold. More than ready." "I know." I turned from the window. "There's one more place I need to go. Back to where it all began. The GO station in Oakville where everything had changed. I needed to sit there again. Not as a warrior, but as a grandfather. The same metal bench. The same October afternoon, 2 weeks later. But the man sitting there was different, lighter, freer. No hockey bag stuffed with clothes this time. No desperation. Just Liam chasing pigeons across the platform, his arms stretched wide like airplane wings, his laughter echoing off the concrete. I poured coffee from a thermos. Simple, practical. Nothing like the expensive wine I'd once thought mattered at those Sunday dinners. A woman with a stroller walked past. Our eyes met. We exchanged genuine smiles, the kind strangers share when the world feels briefly kind. I realized something then. I had finally dropped the mask I'd worn for 40 years. The mask of the empire builder, the strategist, the man who turned construction contracts into fortunes and never let anyone see him bleed. It was gone now, and I could breathe. I hadn't just saved my son. I'd given him something more valuable than Mackenzie Properties, more lasting than any balance sheet. A legacy of dignity, the kind that must be protected every single day, in every decision, in how you treat people when no one's watching. Richard Harrington had believed that breeding mattered most. Family names, the right schools, the right postal code on your birth certificate. He was wrong. Character matters. Loyalty, love, the things you can't inherit, only earn. 40 years I'd spent building Mackenzie Construction into an empire. 87 million in annual contracts at its peak. It took only 2 weeks to build something more valuable. A complete family. A memory surfaced. Unbidden. Daniel, at 8 years old, standing in the doorway of my home office, wearing his Oakville Rangers jersey. "Dad, will you come to my game? I'm starting goalie tonight." I'd glanced up from blueprints for a condo tower in Mississauga. "Not tonight, son. Maybe next time." There had been so many next times, and I'd missed every one. I couldn't get those years back. But I could fix the mistake going forward, one generation at a time. "Grandpa." Liam came running, his face flushed and happy, clutching a small hockey puck he'd found near the tracks. "Watch this." He wound up like an NHL player and threw the puck toward me in a wobbly arc. I caught it cleanly, feeling the satisfying smack against my palm. "Good throw, champ. You want to practice more?" "Yes." His eyes lit up. "Dad said you'd teach me to skate backwards." I smiled, really smiled, not the calculated expression I'd used in boardrooms and negotiations. "Then let's practice. There's a rink in Burlington that has public skating tonight." We spent the next hour at the station, Liam asking questions about everything. Why do trains run on electricity? How do you catch a puck without a glove? Can we get hot chocolate after? I answered every question, took my time, didn't check my phone once. Fixing mistakes, I thought. One generation at a time. The sunset painted Lake Ontario in shades of orange and red, visible from the platform. Commuters streamed past on their way home from work. The city hummed with its usual evening energy. "Come on, Liam," I said, holding out my hand. "Let's go home. Your dad's waiting." His small fingers wrapped around mine, warm and trusting. We walked together toward my truck, past the coffee shop where business people tapped at laptops, past the taxi stand where drivers waited for fares. At the edge of the parking lot, I looked back one last time at the bench where everything had changed, where my son had sat with 2 hockey bags and a 5-year-old boy, believing he'd lost everything, where I had decided that some things, family, dignity, love, were worth going to war for, where it all began, where it all ended, and where, finally, healing could start. Looking back now, sitting in my study while Liam sleeps upstairs and Daniel reviews contracts at the kitchen table, I realize something important I need to share with you. Don't be like me. Don't wait 40 years to build an empire before you build a family. Don't let pride make you send your son into a den of wolves just to prove he can stand alone. I thought I was teaching Daniel strength by stepping back. Instead, I almost lost him entirely. Grandpa stories like mine, the ones about corporate warfare and calculated revenge, they make for compelling tales. But you know what? The best grandpa stories aren't about boardroom battles. They're about teaching a 5-year-old to skate backwards, about being there for bedtime, about answering when a small voice asks, "Grandpa, can we go to your house?" Real grandpa stories are written in presence, not in power. I believe we're given chances we don't deserve, opportunities to correct our mistakes and protect what matters. First, my son was preserved when I failed to protect him. Second, I had the resources to fight back when others had none. Third, I was given Liam, a living reminder that legacy isn't measured in revenue but in relationships. What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his family? I gained Mackenzie Construction, $87 million in annual contracts, properties across Ontario, but I nearly lost what mattered most. Family stories shouldn't be about courtroom victories and financial takedowns. The family stories worth passing down are about showing up, choosing your son's hockey game over another contract negotiation, holding your grandson's hand instead of another business meeting. These are the family stories that actually matter, the ones that echo through generations, not because of their drama, but because of their truth. If you're facing betrayal like I did, whether from in-laws, business partners, or people you trusted, remember this: justice matters. Dignity matters, but don't let the fight consume you so completely that you forget what you're fighting for. We weren't put on this earth to destroy our enemies. We were put here to love our families, to stand for what's right, to pass down something better than wealth to the next generation. The best revenge isn't destruction. It's living well, loving deeply, and finally coming home. Liam's asking for another bedtime story. We're reading about hockey legends this week. He wants to play for the Leafs someday. I told him I'd be at every game. This time, I mean it. Thank you for listening to an old man's story. One final thought for those of you facing similar situations. Financial abuse within families is more common than people realize. If someone is forging your signature, taking loans in your name, or using your identity for their benefit, you have legal options. In Canada, contact the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre. Document everything. Trust your instincts when something feels wrong. Emotional abuse is harder to prove but equally damaging. If someone is systematically undermining your confidence, recording you without consent to build a false narrative, or isolating you from family support, these are serious warning signs. Resources exist through provincial victim services across the country. And if you're a grandparent watching your grandchildren being used as pawns in family conflicts, know that you have rights too. Grandparent access legislation varies by province, but the courts increasingly recognize the importance of these relationships. You don't have to be wealthy to protect your family. You just have to be willing to fight for them. The strongest thing a person can do isn't building an empire. It's building a family that trusts each other, supports each other, and shows up when it matters. That's the real legacy worth leaving behind. Take care of each other out there.